How to Find Love, a guide to finding love for the midlife woman. This is Module 5, Managing Midlife Men Relationships. Part 1. Now you know about the 4 major character types you're dealing with, you'll be able to apply these when you meet a new man or when considering a few possibilities. You can and should ask lots of questions to find out more about their history and preferences. But real life is not quite as simple as the categories derived from the chess pieces. There may be some men who have some character traits from 2 or more of the character types I've outlined. It will be up to you to work out how much of each. At least you'll have a starting point to assess which of the 4 they're most like. The best way to look at it is like a hand of bridge or whist. There are 4 suits of cards and you will receive 13 cards which are a combination of hearts, diamonds, spades and clubs. Very rarely will all the cards be the same suit, or will they be equally divided between the suits? You will usually have one strong suit and then a smaller number of the other suits. I trust you'll find it easier to do that now that you know about the 4 major character types you're dealing with. Before we go on to look at management of the particular character types, there are some general points to make which apply to some degree to nearly all midlife men. Firstly, it is common for some women to believe that they can change a man's character once they've got some commitment, particularly a wedding ring. Well, let me ask you, who said this? Men marry women with the hope they will never change. Women marry men with the hope they will change. Invariably, both are disappointed. Well, you might be surprised, I was, to learn that Albert Einstein, no less, said this. His strength, like all great thinkers, was to see the obvious before other people. But what have been your observations about getting men to change? There seems to be plenty of evidence that they don't. Well, if you can't change his character, you may be able to understand and manage it. In this course, I'm focusing on midlife men because I'm writing for midlife women. Our chances of finding love long term are greater with someone in the same age group as ourselves. You may be able to attract a younger man for a short fling, but he's unlikely to stay around for the long haul. If you go for an older man, he may be more grateful, but his habits are more set. Also, he may not be able to keep up with you, and will almost certainly die before you, and probably when you are still quite young. A man's underlying character is probably formed in his childhood or earlier, but can be masked in early adulthood by a lot of external demands being made on him. In his 20s and 30s, a guy is still operating under the influence of other people and role models, including his peers. He's also finding which survival skills work best for him and what he can and can't get away with. By the time he reaches middle life, the tide has gone out, revealing the underlying features of his true character. Well, if you can't change a midlife man, the best you can hope to do is manage him and get the cooperation. If you can't change a midlife man, the best you can hope to do is to manage him to get the cooperation and support you need for the partnership. The critical question in a relationship is, are your needs being met? And I put up a picture here of the classic book on relationships called His Needs, Her Needs by Willard F. Harley. He and his wife worked for many years as marriage counselors, and this book is based on their clinical experience. They concluded that men and women have 5 basic needs from a relationship. But guess what? There are 5 different needs. None of them are the same for each sex. These are, for women, these are affection, conversation, honesty and openness, financial support and security, and family commitment. You will probably recognize these quite readily, but he won't unless you tell him or get him to read the book. His needs are sexual fulfillment, recreational companionship, attractive spouse, domestic support, and admiration. Looking at these two together, the key thing is to understand his needs and be prepared to meet them. However, you'll need to discuss these needs and find out in what form he wants them fulfilled. Then you must decide if you feel able to meet those needs. Only then can you expect to have a meaningful discussion on your needs and get him to meet them in the way you want. Another book I'd strongly recommend is 5 Love Languages. The love languages that the author identifies are acts of service, words of affirmation, receiving gifts, quality time, and physical touch. The interesting thing that he says is that each of these things needs to be treated as a bankable currency. So you have to make sure that you give in the right currency. And he says, treat it like a bank account. The more you give, the higher your standing is with the bank. The more that you go against the things or miss them out or forget, then that diminishes the balance in the bank. It's a very helpful analogy, and I think you'll find this book very enlightening and enjoyable. Next book I've picked out, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. And what I say about that is most people have heard of it, only some have read it, and fewer still have understood the message. And the basic message, which needs repeating because modern day feminists have discredited this book, is that men and women are different. There's not a question of equality, one being more superior to the other or having more advantages than the other. They're both different. And then the final book I'm going to talk about is Why Men Don't Listen and Women Can't Read Maps. But don't be misled by the title. It may seem like a superficial book. It's not. It's very readable, but it talks about the 100,000 years of evolution that has made men and women what they are. And we can see that in that evolution, over all that time, certain characteristics were built in for survival. Men were bred to be hunters, otherwise the tribe didn't eat. Women were bred to look after the home and family and protect it from all sorts of dangers. This actually links quite well to the next point I want to make, which is to learn how to communicate with midlife men. You will learn a lot about this process from the 4 books I have just talked about. Men have evolved as hunters, which means they have to be very focused on tracking and catching their prey. In modern terms, this means they can concentrate on only one thing at a time. It's a common jibe to say men can't multitask, but this has been part of their success formula. If you try to break into their train of thought or what they are doing, you may be heard, but you won't be listened to. If you want to communicate with a man so you are heard and understood, you need to ask for an appointment, using a phrase like, when would be a convenient time to talk? You might get the answer, which is now, in which case you can expect full attention. The second thing to know about men is that they process things differently from women. They prefer to think things through rather than talk them through, which is what women usually do. So give them time to go away and think about what you propose, but then follow up at an agreed time. The next thing to talk about is sex and health. Despite apparent veneers of civilization, a healthy midlife man operates according to his biological programming. Biologically, he's programmed to spread his seed as widely as possible to further the survival of the species. Even if he's not aware of it, he's on the lookout all the time. Anything that moves is either a threat or an opportunity. This includes opportunities to spread his seed. The production of testosterone in men diminishes as they hit middle life and has certain predictable results. The most obvious is a reduction in the urgency of their sex drive and a reduction in physical condition and vigor, unless he has a reason to keep fit. That does not necessarily affect their mental sex drive, which can become more interested in fantasies and obsessions about sex. If you want to keep him faithful, you need to be the most interesting source of sex around him by indulging his fantasies and obsessions. The reduction in testosterone also potentially produces hair loss, weight increase, loss of muscle mass, and loss of bone mass. The importance of this to you is that men die before women. If they neglect themselves or are neglected, they tend to die earlier. If you have taken the time and trouble to groom a man to meet your needs and lifestyle, you have an interest in keeping him alive as long as possible. Money management. Money is a key area to keep in mind. In general, men are not good money managers and take more risks with their money than women. At the very least, you should ensure you keep control of your own money. Joint bank accounts are nearly always a source of trouble. If he has a reliable income, the best setup is for him to pay you a set amount by direct debit into an account you control and use for general expenditure. You should educate yourself in money management and financial skills. It is not difficult, and there are many simple money management books available. The above are all factors which apply to men to a greater or lesser degree. In the next section, we will be looking at the particular strategies for handling the 4 midlife men characters we have identified.